Welcome back to the Bishop Fox live stream, The Art of Hacking, here in sunny Las Vegas. My name is Tom Eston. I am the VP of Consulting and Cosmos at Bishop Fox.
I'm Aleth Dennis. I am a senior security consultant on the Red team at Bishop Fox.
And I have the pleasure of introducing our last guest of the day. We saved the best for last. And we have senior security analyst on the Bishop Fox capability development team, Tom Hudson.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, welcome. Really excited to talk to you.
Yes, welcome. Thank you so much for making time this afternoon to come hang out with us. I'm sure there's way more fun things to do out there. But as a senior security engineer at Bishop Fox, can you tell us more about your role and capacity development on the capacity development team for Cosmos?
Yeah, absolutely. So I primarily work on tooling, security tooling, mostly in the prototyping stage. So usually in the situation where we have a problem that we want to solve, whether that's a data problem or it's a capability problem. It's a capability development team. I will prototype different ways of doing those things, and hopefully in a way that's scalable and productizable in some way, shape or form, and hopefully useful to the operators at the very least.
Absolutely. And how does that work contribute to improved ASM for customers?
That's a good question. So a lot of the things I work on are related to attack surface management in general, and primarily around the discovery of attack surface. So, many of our customers have truly enormous attack surfaces, and finding all of the little nooks and crannies of them could be quite tricky. So I work a lot with things like our crawlers and other discovery tools internally to improve their capabilities so that we discover more things, which means we have more things to test, which means, generally speaking, we find more vulnerabilities.
Your individual specialization lies in developing innovative tools that improve the quality of intelligence derived from penetration testing and attack surface management. Could you talk to us about how you found a passion for tooling?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've always had a passion for just every kind of tool, really. So, I grew up helping my dad repair motorbikes and that kind of thing. And usually he was working on the actual motorbike and I was sort of figuring out what tool we would need next and that kind of thing. And often when you're working with that old crusty stuff, standard tools aren't good enough. You need to grind a spanner in a particular way to get it to fit a nut that was, seized for the last 40 years. So I'd always been interested in tools in some way, but when I started getting into security and bug bounty and hacking and that sort of thing, I enjoyed that stuff. But I found I was at my happiest when I was doing the tooling thing. I kind of think of it as, the knights are out doing the hacking and I'm the blacksmith, which is, equally as rewarding. It's just a different skill set, but I always prefer being the blacksmith.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that because sometimes on red team engagements, I much prefer being operations and not the boots on the ground. Is there anything aside from contentment and happiness with tooling that motivates you to create new tools? And how do you assist other professionals in their security research, penetration testing, and bug bounty hunting efforts?
I think primarily it's always about having a problem to solve. We have an outcome that we want already, and it's either difficult to get to or awkward or sometimes seemingly impossible, or it's just going to be a really large amount of work. And I think one of the ways that I can help the largest amount of people is to create tools that solve those kinds of problems. But oftentimes it's just, I've encountered a specific problem myself and thought, how can I do this using existing tools? And often the answer is not very easily.
Right.
Or maybe it's in some very roundabout way, or more often than not, I'll find that an existing tool does partly what I need, but also does a whole host of other things I don't care about.
Right.
So I'll make something much more focused, but build it in a way built around this idea of the Unix philosophy of having small reusable components. And
just much more efficient.
Build something focused that I can then reuse in a bunch of different situations.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think efficiency is something that's lacking in quite a few tools.
That's a fair comment.
Can you share an instance where one of your tools or methodologies played a critical role in uncovering a significant security vulnerability or helping an organization improve its security posture?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a real quick one. Last night at a meetup, someone came up to me and said, JSLUICE, the tool that we've just open sourced with Bishop Fox, we ran it against our stuff and found a whole bunch of things we didn't know existed that we're now frantically trying to fix. So that was really great to hear. But I think one of the ones that springs to mind was I was working with a company a number of years ago, and I'd found an employee who had a public GitHub repository that potentially had some information related to their employer in it. And they had quite a long history. And just like what we were talking about, there's tools like Trufflehog for pulling secrets out of GitHub repositories, including out the history. But it's an all-in-one tool. It does everything that you need right there. It looks through the history and it matches the patterns. But I just wanted to see the history, and that turned out to be a little bit harder. So I wrote a tool to do that and ended up finding a private key in the history that the Trufflehog had missed, and reported it to this company, and they ended up making really quite dramatic structural changes to how they handle their internal developers' authentication and their use of individual GitHub accounts and that kind of thing. So it had, really quite wide-ranging effects on their internal policy.
Yeah, I could see that. I know a lot of people that use services like that want to maintain a list of their activities and their own personal one, if they go to a new job. And so we see that quite commonly, where individuals will want to keep things in their own repositories where they probably shouldn't be.
That's why you get them to open source it instead and do it legitimately. That's the way I do it anyway.
Yeah. So you've developed just all kinds of open source tooling. It's freely available, right? From your perspective, what kind of influence have you observed that open source tooling has on the security community?
I think quite dramatic, and especially sort of in the bug bounty world, where prior to the existence of things like bug bounty, most of the security tools were either used by people who were up to no good or professionals with a budget. And there wasn't a great deal available. So when I first started looking, that was free and good, but also well suited to the problems that I was facing. But over the last number of years, we've had entire companies like Project Discovery, for example, crop up with a different business model. Really,
totally.
Their tools are free and open source and available to anyone. And they make their money through other means, and I think it's a really great place to be, because you can see, not only use those tools directly, but you can see how they've done things. You can take the ideas and mix them, match them, and they often choose permissive licenses like MIT that lets you do that kind of mixing and matching and pulling things together. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, it's awesome for sure. What are some areas of focus that you want to do, like more research? Like what's any kind of open source projects you're thinking about maybe creating?
Yeah, so I mentioned JSLUICE that we recently open sourced. I have some ideas of ways to improve that, to get better interoperability with more popular JavaScript frameworks and that kind of thing. And I think that's filling my mind quite a bit as well. And of course, large language models are dominating the tech headlines these days.
Yes, they
are. And I have a few ideas of things that I want to use those for that are perhaps much smaller scale than what other people are thinking about. I'm not thinking having them write the code for me, but solve problems that I've tried to solve in the past that were difficult, like spotting word boundaries in single pieces of text. Like you have a hashtag and it's all one word. Humans can read those really easily, or even just domain names, subdomains. But writing a program that can split that out into a series of words so that you can maybe change one of them and enumerate things turns out to be really difficult. So that's something I'm looking forward to looking into as well.
That's awesome. So obviously, I mean, giving back to the community, mentoring, teaching, I mean, all of that stuff is really important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you approach mentoring, and what advice would you give to people that are aspiring to get into cybersecurity, or people that look up to you because of the contributions you've made back to the community?
I think my approach to mentoring is primarily to try and explain how things work rather than how to do things. And I know that doesn't gel well with everybody, but I think when it does gel well with them, it gels really well.
Oh, yeah.
Because knowing how to do things is only useful if you only have those exact things to do.
Right.
But if you know how things work, you can figure out how to do anything.
Yeah.
And especially in the security side of things, I think, if our goal is to figure out how to break something, how to make it do something it wasn't designed to do, you first have to understand what it was designed to do and how it does it. I think that's a really big part of it. As for people who look up to me and want to follow in my footsteps, I think probably the recommendation is, well, don't. But find your own footsteps, because they're what will work best for you. But here's the knowledge that's that might help you along the way if you understand how the web works and how computers work. Even at a real basic level. I've run training courses in the past where we've talked about registers and how CPUs actually execute code and that kind of thing, which is, when you're dealing with web security, very rarely comes into the equation. But I think just having that background knowledge almost gives people sort of a new level of confidence in what they're doing. So I think that's probably my main advice.
Great advice. Great advice. So last question for you. How did you get the nickname Tom Nom Nom?
So I think firstly, I want to say it passes what I would call the nickname test, which is that I didn't come up with it myself.
Right.
I think that's, anyone who comes up with their own nickname, it's rarely...
Not.
Yeah. It's always a little bit too cool for the person it's attributed to, right? So an old co-worker of mine came up with it, and it's actually a really silly thing. We had a small plastic, I think a frog or toad with a circuit in the side, and it made an om nom nom noise. And word association and rhyming took over, and let's say I'm well known for my appetite. So it was quite fitting. And as soon as Tom Nom Nom became a thing, I went and checked tomnomnom.com was available. And because it was, it stuck from that point.
Became a legacy.
That's right. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the live stream. And it's an honor to work with you at Bishop Fox as well. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the rest of DEF CON. Any final words for our audience? How can our everyone watching find out more about you and your projects?
More about me. So I'm at Tom Nom Nom, basically everywhere online. Twitter, I'm calling it Twitter still.
It's Twitter.
Yes.
I'll allow it.
I'm pretty sure that dude dead names his own kid, so I'm calling it Twitter. On GitHub and so on and so forth. I'm around.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is a wrap for the Bishop Fox Art of Hacking live stream from DEF CON. I want to thank all of you for watching the live stream. We much appreciate it. You can find out more about Bishop Fox and all the things we have going on at bishopfox.com. So for myself and my co-host Alith, thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.